up, everyone? What is up? Pardon me, I have a little bit of a cold that I am getting over. And I think I just started in the middle of ads. I'm really off today. What's everyone up to today? I got a few videos that were shared with me over in my Discord that we're gonna, talk about and everything like that. As well as, Is he sick after hanging out at work all day? Hey, I've always been sick. Maybe just mostly in the head. Well, I didn't want to get stuck in the house all day. I love my dogs, but they're pains in the ass. I've just been, doped up on cold medicine and everything. Don't worry, I made sure it wasn't COVID. Anyway, I've been, getting to look forward to... My throat was scratchy. That's what happened with me. My throat was scratchy like 2 days ago. And then, slowly built up to a cough. So I've just been, taking Zicam like no tomorrow. I've been doing the Zicam nasal swabs, the Zicam tablets, the Rapid Melts, downing Dayquil, as well as NyQuil. Of course, you take NyQuil at night. And then I keep like a bag of these in my bag when I went to work. What was the question it came out with on the bot? You name the country that forms the most prominent part of the Horn of Africa? Yeah, Somalia. That makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, there's some kind of a cold going around. My best friend, Sugar, she also got sick a couple days ago. So it must be something going around. But it definitely don't feel like the Rona. Just feels like a plain old cold. But anyway, I'm still digging this, microphone here. Like the fish tank cleaner. What was it that was doing the fish tank cleaner? What was that in reference to? Was that the Rona thing? I can't remember. Was that... No, that was the, horse medicine, I think it was. Yeah. I need to get a new boom arm, because this, like, seems to, like, drop down a little too fast. I really need to tighten something. But then it messes up with the wall mount I have with it going on. I love the new microphone design. I love the wrap that I put on it and that. I know I talked about it last stream. But anyway. Also, Blue Sky has been popping. I don't know if y'all have been messing with it lately. Talked about it a while ago. I've been on it for a little over a year because I was one of the first 50,000 people there. I got an invite code. If you've been following me on Blue Sky, you'll know that I just reached parity with when I left Twitter. So when I left Twitter, I had been there for about a decade or so. And I had just gained 1,200 followers at that time. Andrew Tate got banned in a day. Yeah, I heard about that. Now, here's the funny thing. Not to get into the political realm here, but, like, conservatives have been overwhelmingly say, well, they join Blue Sky and they get banned. Wrong. I've seen this firsthand. They join Blue Sky. They violate the terms of service by harassing other people and such as that, and then get banned. If you can, there's nothing wrong with deferring points of view, but you got to abide by the terms of service. Although theoretically, there's nothing to stop an individual from making their own Blue Sky PDS, personal data server, as I've talked about before in other content, and then joining Blue Sky that way, because if you go to bsky.app, you're on Blue Sky's own personal data server. you can migrate your data off of that into your own, which I plan to do at some point in the near future. I just haven't had time to sit down and do that. But that totally can be done. And then at that point, your data is housed on your own server. But there are moderation services that work on top of that. So it's interesting how they have it split out. I talk about this a lot more in the YouTube video. If you go watch my YouTube, I think it's called Life After Twitter, Exploring Mastodon, Twitter, and Blue Sky. I go deep into it. It's about an hour-long video. I do a deep dive, at least at a high level, but it's deep, of Threads, Mastodon, and Blue Sky, along with the tools that I use to manage all three platforms. Have I ever tried Nobara? No, I haven't. Look, the reality is, most Linux distributions are pretty much the same thing after you've been doing it for about 10 years. So, pick a distro, be happy with it. If I recall, Nobara is just basically an Arch wrapped up with some gaming stuff out of the box, about it. There's not really much difference between different Linux distributions other than, yeah. So could someone take your data that's public to their own data area for whatever reason? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you reword that a little bit better? Because, that's a little bit, that could be taken in several different ways. I just want to make sure I understand what you mean by that question. But, true, it's based on Fedora. Oh, so it's based on Fedora. So it's just basically Fedora with extra steps. It's the same thing as Pop! OS. Pop! OS is like Ubuntu with extra steps. Although, it's a little bit too oversimplistic of it, but you get the point. You don't think Archcraft will ease me into Arch? You can use Manjaro, you can use whatever you want, but at the end of the day, Arch won't really be used in most production environments. That's the reality of things. I know that Steam OS is starting to base it on Arch, but the honest truth is, at the end of the day, pick whatever works for you. I've tried Arch, I got burned by it, with the updates and stuff like that, just messing up my system. And I need stability because I actually work on my machine. So, disregard that question, don't matter. Okay. But, as I was saying, Blue Sky is really hopping. They hit just 21 million users. They've been averaging about 1 million new users per day, or every other day. That is an insane amount of growth. And I've hit over 1,200 followers. Actually, we can probably pull up, what is it, Glitch Social? Blue Sky. Trying to find, there's a little glitch in Blue Sky, I noticed, that once... What's your username on Blue Sky? Same thing. Chief Geek 3D. You can find in the links in bio. Whatever happened to Ubuntu TV? Did they have an Ubuntu TV? Look, Ubuntu tried doing so many different things. They also tried doing Ubuntu Phone, but the Ubuntu Phone never really went anywhere. For those of you curious, if you want to follow me on another social media, I'm usually Chief Geek 3D on most things. I keep it simple. Branding. Hold on. Let me do that right. Branding. Hope y'all heard the chimes with that. Would you recommend someone starting 9FF in tech? How would you recommend words! Wow! I'm having the cold medicine finally hit me slowly. How would you recommend someone starting 9FF in tech? What do you mean by 9FF? Oh, start off in tech. So I actually talked about this a little bit, when it came to, if you were on my Blue Sky. Actually had this earlier. So... Alright. I actually posted this 4 hours ago, this little thread here. People often ask me the best way to learn cybersecurity, Linux, or tech in general. My answer, it's not about books, it's about projects. Pick a random project, build it, and then push yourself. What can you add? How would you attack it? Every project teaches you something new. When I work on home lab projects, I'm always thinking about new approaches or how to secure/attack what I'm building. Even with video editing, I try to learn a new technique every time. The goal isn't perfection, it's continuous learning. That's how you stay ahead. Remember, by the time something's in a book, it's often out of date. This field moves too fast. IT and cybersecurity aren't 9 to 5 careers. To grow, you'll need to spend personal time tinkering, learning, and exploring new ideas. It's a lifestyle, not just a job. So, as always, I will tell people project-based learning. Yes, a home lab. Definitely, you're on the right way, Chris. But, and just to be clear, a home lab doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't need a thing like I do. Like, I have an entire, 12U rack or 16U, either way, with, a 1500 watt UPS in there. There's a pfSense firewall. There's PoE switches and all that. That was an iteration of building up over 5 to 6 years. You can start, simply put, or with a Raspberry Pi. You can start with a little Raspberry Pi. My first home lab was a few old spare computers that I got. So I started out many years ago doing basic IT repair, maintenance, things like that. Your basic going to people's houses, fixing their computers, and staple easy tech. A lot of times, those computers that I was replacing were perfectly fine. They were just a little bit old. Maybe a dead hard drive they didn't want to pay for. Well, my manager was kind enough to let me actually take computers out of the recycle pile as long as I didn't take the hard drive and then just put a new hard drive in. And then I would use that to tinker and learn. Those were, I wouldn't say my first Linux boxes. Some of those were actually inside of my computers that I got from Dad and stuff like that. And I digress. But anyway, I got enough computers that I could actually put them together and do a lot of tinkering. And I did the same thing growing up. Where my dad would have extra computers because he too did computer consulting back in the day. So I would get extra boxes and everything like that, and I'd put them together. Did you do any certifications? The only certification I have is CISSP. That is the first and only certification that I've got, and I only just got that in August. I've been in the field for 10 years or so. You don't need certifications to get in the field. The only reason I got my certification was work was offering to pay for it. And literally, it was a case of my coworkers like, I want to go for CISSP. And I basically just piped up and went to my manager and said, can I get one of those too? They paid for my classes. They paid for my cert. And I got CISSP. I don't know what you heard about me, but you can't get $1 out of me. No Cadillac, no perms you can't see, because I'm a motherfucking CISSP. What's your thoughts about CAH cert? I haven't done it, but I've heard from a lot of people that CAH has actually gotten a bit of ill repute because they were caught plagiarizing some things, if I'm not mistaken, and some other things. And there was also a issue where they were claimed to be a little bit sexist, if I recall, with some questions they had. I'll have to look that up. I remember I talked about it a little bit earlier. Do you use Linux on your desktop? Absolutely. I use Linux on my main box over here. I use Pop! OS Linux, and I have Windows 10 Enterprise over here for the extra stream box. There are a few things that I still need Windows for. I haven't figured out how to get completely switched over to Linux for my capture card, my Stream Deck, the Elgato key lighting, and the OBS bot camera. So there's a few things that I need to at least figure out that end of things before I can fully switch over to Linux for the streaming part of it. Hold on. Oh, here we are. This was in 2021. So for you, those talking about the CEH, which I believe is overseen by the EC Council, on Friday, April 9th, in a bid to promote upcoming Women in Security webinar, EC Council published a survey question on LinkedIn. This was the original image here. It's a little bit effed up. The wording is effed up. Join our upcoming webinar led by moderator Nini, whatever, the panelist name, things like that. And your questions were, what according to you are the most common challenges faced by women in the cybersecurity domain? Only men can do this job? Women can't handle this job? Women aren't encouraged enough? LinkedIn? I don't really do LinkedIn. I don't really have a need for LinkedIn right now. I'm good with my job right now. LinkedIn is really good for talking to recruiters and stuff like that. I don't really do it. You want to get a hold of me, it's Blue Sky, it's Mastodon, it's my Discord. That's where I mostly hang out. But the wording of this whole thing was a little bit effed up. Not only that, if I remember, they were also purging responses that were actually from women that were very disappointed with this whole thing. So, you can read this whole thing. But yeah, CEH hasn't had a good amount of respect in a little while. Now, I do hear good things about OSCP, in terms of, going for a job, all that. 4 a.m. iDRAC firmware updates, always fun. What are you doing at 4 a.m. on that? See, Customer Hill, the EC shirt. I don't think women like tech. Oh, I know a lot of women who like tech. Trust me, there's a lot of them. My mentor, I don't know why the camera decided to just follow me all of a sudden. My mentor, one of them, is a woman. She was a DEF CON speaker. She's one of the big reasons I got into cybersecurity. She helped me move on from doing IT, networking, and everything like that, and get into the mindset of cybersecurity. I owe her a lot. I owe her my career. She is an amazing person overall. And I think one of the most annoying things is that she hired me, and despite her hiring me and being my boss, when we would go to meetings with vendors, they would talk to me and think I was her boss. And I would have to correct them all the time and say, no. I'm here to support her. You need to talk to her. Speak to her. I am here to support her, and if I have additional questions or, there's something that maybe she doesn't have a little background on, I will help her out. But first and foremost, she is the one in charge. And they all dress Subarus. No. She was a New Yorker. She don't drive. I am from Sweden, living in the Philippines and Europe. There are a lot of women in cybersecurity. Oh, absolutely. Go to DEF CON. You'll find a lot of women. You'll find a lot of women in this field, in cybersecurity. And look, at the end of the day, I don't care if your anatomy is internal or external. All that matters is tech in this field. That's how I feel. Show me the tech. So I really don't care what your color your skin is, whether who you pray to or lack thereof, who you're attracted to, what you identify as. I don't care any about that. It's a tech field. That's all that matters. We talk tech. The Asian market in my town is called Blue Sky. That's kind of funny. Black Hat Amsterdam is at least 25 to 30% women. That's interesting. But, yeah. And speaking of Blue Sky, that thing has been popping off so fast. It's amazing that I only started taking it seriously shortly after I went to DEF CON. And within that time, I've gone from handful of followers to about 1,200. I actually see the potential for Blue Sky is going to have a bigger following than my Mastodon. Blue Sky will not be exactly like Insta and Threads. No, it won't, because the big issue that you have is that's Meta. Meta is grow then flop. No, Meta's already flopping right now, and for different reasons. Blue Sky has about 14% of their user base using the app daily, whereas Meta can barely hold 1%. You have more daily active users on Blue Sky than you do on Threads. Meta's been flopping for years. Exactly. And why has Meta been flopping? Because they haven't been listening to their damn users. Blue Sky's actually listening to their user base and making changes based on feedback. Plus, Blue Sky is open source. You can actually make suggestions to the different things. It's totally different. It's not corporate driven, it's people driven. There's a big difference. Best way to prevent social engineering issues with YubiKey. A lot of the social engineering issues with YubiKey are not really unique to a YubiKey. It's really just the same thing as anything else. Be mindful of, emails and things like that that are going to be phishing you, trying to, do token stealing and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing unique in terms of the social engineering aspects of a YubiKey that is any different than multi-factor authentication, your passwords, or any other access thereof. It comes down to its social engineering. So, keep that in mind. The one advantage that a YubiKey has is that unlike app-based multi-factor authentication, which is usually living on the device itself, is... Stop, Drake. Is that, how do I put this? So with SMS, let's go through the different levels. So with SMS MFA, your weakness is SMS itself. So you're vulnerable to SIM jacking, interception, and system signal 7 attacks. With app-based multi-factor authentication, you have a little bit more security, but most people use their app-based multi-factor authentication inside their phone. So you have the potential that the actual seed key that is generating that TOTP on the MFA app could be swiped through malware. That is the potential that could happen. With a YubiKey, it has to be plugged in. Now, the ones before firmware 5.7 potentially could be physically taken, and there is a way to copy them if you have an oscilloscope and a little bit of background with cryptography as well as electrical engineering. But realistically, that is such a hard thing to accomplish and be able to copy the key before they notice it and repackage it and everything that the average person shouldn't really be concerned. If you are more of a victim to potential espionage, state actor, or things like that, maybe it's something to be worried about. But then again, you just got a new YubiKey with the 5.7 or later firmware that has the cryptographic library that doesn't allow for those issues. I talked about that in a prior YouTube video. So, yeah, with YubiKey, with social engineering, the ways to protect yourself are really no different than any other method. Just be careful what you click. Be careful of phishing. Be careful what you install, all that, the usual jazz. So let's check out, how'd you get your first IT job? Give me a sec, because now you're making me feel old, because I have to think, what was my first IT job? So if we exclude the little IT jobs I did for my dad's little company and stuff like that, let's talk about in my adult years as a professional. I'm trying to think, what was the timeline? Yeah. First IT job, I guess you could say, was the Staples Easy Tech. I've talked about that a little bit in a prior video on YouTube. Yeah, I did that. And then eventually did enough on paper to get hired by an MSP, Wait, no. I'm trying to think of my timeline because this is getting a little bit blurry. So, did that. Went to an IT recruiting agency. They got me a job as like a help desk kind of thing for a small company. And I was also working part-time from an MSP. That MSP went under because the guy, his wife cheated on him. There was a whole messy divorce, and he couldn't keep me on. It was the only time a boss I've actually seen cry when he, had to let me go. He didn't want to let me go, but he had to. Couldn't keep the business afloat. From there, worked at a big corporate company that, if you ever hear me talk about how the most toxic workplaces pretend to be fun workplaces, that's the job I'm talking about. And then from there, went to be an MSP at another job and was there for about 4 years or so. Would you recommend a cybersecurity boot camp as a start? Not necessarily. So I have an entire YouTube video for a lot of people that are asking, like, how to start and things like that. What's my shirt say? Oh, it's the Password Village t-shirt from... not this past DEF CON, but the DEF CON before it. This was 2 years ago. Alright, so if you go into my channel, you will see there's a video. Yeah, here we go. Made it a month ago. Do you really need college or boot camps to get into IT and cybersecurity? It's not a very well watched video because it's one of my earlier videos, and I'm still pretty new on YouTube. But yeah, this is geared towards a lot of the people that are curious how to get started into getting your first job, things like that. So I give a little bit of advice on things you can do. How do I get into reversing vulnerability work? I'm not really in that side of things. That's not my forte. Best free and open source note-taking app? What's wrong with LibreOffice? It depends on what you're trying to do. I'm changing my laptop without physically getting their hands on it. If someone's changing your password without getting your hands on your laptop, you have some malware installed. So either you can clean that out or you can reinstall Windows if you're using Windows. Best, yeah, thank you. I have problem only Steam and Linux. Proton won't choose version. I mean, you should just be able to go into the Steam Play option and have it do that. Hold on, Steam. What's up, Just Dev? Something similar to OneNote in functionality. I haven't really played with any of the open source ones to do that kind of thing. 'Cause I'm a basic bitch. OneNote, open source. Let's see. What are our options? Got Trillium Notes, Zernal PP. That's funny to say, Zernal PP. PP. Standard Notes. Yes, I'm a child. There's a few options out there. What's up, CKNA? How's it going? Emacs org mode. Yeah, you can always use Emacs. I've messed with Joplin. Janis Joplin? Some of y'all are too young to get that. And won't accept. I don't know what to tell you on the Proton version thing, because usually I can just go in and do the thing So normally I just go Steam settings. Where is it? Compatibility. Why is all your passwords about someone having your nuts? Because it's funny. Yeah. I can switch my versions there. Didn't have to tell you. Okay, let's see. What did the bot say now? Coming soon to a chat near you. In a world where naps are epic and cheeseburgers reign supreme, one chat member awakens to the paradise of Chief Geek 3D stream. It's just Dev stirs from slumber, ready to dive into tech talk and cyber shenanigans. Will they bring the laughter with their cheeky haha PP? Stay tuned for more adventures than just chatting. I don't know what this bot has against you, it's just Dev. It like loves to single you out. It's the funniest thing. Oh, 50 stream streak, nice. But I will say the Twitch side of things is a little bit more fun. I'm working on getting the YouTube side of things going, but YouTube doesn't allow for as much functionality. All right. Now, let me bash opt reset pipewire. Michael. I has food. All right. Do you like working with people or prefer the solitude aspects of working in IT? Here's the reality. There's no such thing as being a one-man team in IT. You're going to be working with people. You have to interface with people. And if you think that, oh, well, I'm an introvert, I'm not going to deal with people, so I'm going to get into tech. Well, guess what? Wrong. So, you're going to be dealing with IT. Yep, IT is a customer service role. Same in cyber. I got to deal with people every day. I got to deal with... there's about 30 or so people in my cybersecurity team of different degrees, whether it be GRC, operations, IAM. We've got several different things. My brain's fried. We got networking is in there. I got to deal with all those different teams. And here's the reality. If you think that being an introvert and not talking to anyone is going to do well for your career, that is going to actually hurt you. You got to deal with people every day. And here's the reality. It's not what you know. It's who you know. Relationships in your career are going to matter more to your promotions and bringing yourself up. So, there's no such thing as being solitary in IT. And for those of you that are like, well, I want a remote-only job. A lot of those, here's the reality. I can understand why a lot of people would want a remote job. But you get overlooked a lot of times because you're remote. You want to have the ability to interface with your leadership and everything like that, because they are the ones that are going to be in charge of your raises and all of that. And if they see you working, that's how you get the bonuses, the promotions, and all of that stuff. So there's no real solitude when it comes to IT. You're going to be working with people, and it depends. How you're going to be working with people can vary at any different level. Like if you're in a small MSP, you may deal with your team, and then you're going to deal with the customer. You deal with a bigger company, you may deal with some end users, and then you're still going to be dealing with people on your team and management. That's the reality. Are you familiar with MySQL, and if so, any advice when learning it? I'm only familiar with C#. Yeah, I've done some MySQL. MySQL's pretty straightforward for a lot of things. I don't do it too much. It's only here and there. A lot of it's basically just understanding that it's a database. I remember the term is called relational database, if I'm not mistaken. So, imagine if you would. Think of things like an Excel spreadsheet. Have you ever dealt with Microsoft Excel? Or, in the open source world, LibreOffice Calc? You just got to think of any of things in rows and columns. And then you have entire tables. So you just have to visualize inside your head what that looks like. Yeah, it's pretty much similar to Excel. It's not that difficult. It's more so the syntax of dealing with those different things. I'm not 50 years old. No, I haven't used Excel. I'm not 50 years old. We're going to be using Excel every day. The reality is Excel is one of the most powerful tools most people in IT can use. Tips for a CS student that wants to get into cyber. So I have an entire video on YouTube, as I mentioned before. Do I need college or boot camps to get into IT or cybersecurity? That's what it's called. Do you really need college or boot camps to get into IT and cybersecurity? Watch that video because it's about 20 minutes or so. The honest truth is, long and short, embrace the suck. You're gonna, I don't care how long you've been in school, how many certs you have, you're gonna be getting sucky jobs to start out. Help desk, pass the ticket along, do the basic thing. It's gonna be about 2 to 3 years of suck before anyone trusts you to do anything. So embrace the suck for a while, and then eventually you get to move on to do the other things. No one's really going to trust you with the important stuff out the gate. But while you're in college, get internships. Do home labs. If you can, maybe get some certs under your belt. But remember, experience is going to trump the pieces of paper on there. So, yeah, that's the other thing. Cyber is not entry level. You're like a tattoo artist who's never tatted before. No one's going to trust. No one's going to trust you like he says. Yep. That's the reality is. I really think people need to... So, here's the not double standard. Here's the, would you say paradox? Either way, you're going to understand what I mean by this. IT and cybersecurity should be treated as their own different departments. Cybersecurity shouldn't be beholden to IT, and IT shouldn't be beholden to cybersecurity. They should be separate departments. But at the same time, cybersecurity is a specialization of IT. You cannot know how to secure the thing unless you fundamentally know how the thing runs. And when you're in school, or even a lot of these certs, you're just learning the concepts. You're not learning how to apply that knowledge. And that takes time to figure out. Have I seen Mr. Robot? Yeah. I like the first season better. And then it kind of went downhill after that because they said it was a little bit too accurate and people were learning too much. God, I wish I could excel. Getting vulnerability assessments done would be so much quicker. I mean, yes, but there are so many other tools out there for vulnerability assessments. Are you talking about on the offensive side or defensive side? Yeah, my social battery is tied to my ADHD. Bad where I can talk for a while and randomly it cuts out. I have the same problem. But the nice thing about working in cyber is I think everyone has an understanding that we don't really like talking to people. We just tolerate people. Because at the end of the day, people primarily are the problem with cybersecurity. I don't care how many tools I put in front of your system. People are the problem. This jerk chicken is great. Offensive, defensive. I go into pet testing and doing Nessus scans and organizing petty reports is our busy work shit job. So with Nessus, are you using straight up Tenable or are you just using the Nessus tool? Because I know Tenable can spit out some nice reports. But then you can use Tenable's API to punch into other systems. Like we're using Avalor to quantify a lot of the stuff. There's other tools out there too. So there's a few ways you can slice that. Picture, if you will, made me think of the Twilight Zone. Huh. Troubleshooting skills you learn working help desk can be worth it. Absolutely. IT ops manager here. I deal with security tickets every day. That's probably because you don't have a proper cyber department, I would presume. Because that's usually what happens. Or you have a corporation that doesn't understand the value of segmenting cybersecurity from IT as a whole. Where I work, networking is actually considered as part of cybersecurity, not IT. It's a constant fight as well with IT, because like they love to blame their issues on, well, you know, their connection is not working. So it sounds like a Z-scaler problem. 9 times out of 10, I'm like, nah, it ain't a Z-scaler problem. Prove to me everything else you've tried to before you get to the point that it's a Z-scaler problem. And they waste my time and theirs. Just the basic vuln scanner. Tenable is the version where you have to have all the agents installed. Not necessarily. So with NASA's, so the way we have it, we have NESA scanners that can do the network scans. And then they can do just the basic unauthenticated scan. And they can also do an authenticated scan that have a service password attached to it that rotates as well. It's controlled by a PAM, Privileged Access Manager. And then it will do an authenticated scan on top of that. So it can do it unauthenticated and authenticated and then give us a report based on all those. We have continuous scanning going on. So depending on the scanning schedule, so it can be like, hey, production's being scanned during this period of time, non-prod is in this time, workstations, the workstations are the ones with the agents. Now the servers themselves can have an agent installed. You don't necessarily need it because a lot of devices you can't install an agent on, like printers, for example. So we actually do printer scans to check for vulnerabilities on the printers. IT just loves when we do that because it kills a few of the printers and makes them print literally wingdings. And I gotta go unplug it and plug it back in. We have to warn IT whenever we do the printer scans. It's fun. We're dipping at 9:30. F1 practices tonight. Yeah, unfortunately we ain't on kick. We respect the DMCA over here. Can't pirate that shiz. What kind of place do you work in? A nice place. I work in a decently sized enterprise. There's a few thousand people that work there. I do a one-off quarterly scan style scans for clients. There's just a bunch of false positive validation, etc. Yeah. Did I see the AI that was trying to tell people to self-delete? I think I heard something about that. Was that Google's Gemini, if I'm not mistaken? This jerk chicken is good. But like there's so much bone in here they leave in. It's good though. Okay. Ed told me a dingo didn't eat my baby. Let me see. So, I saw that Vampire had sent in a few videos over in the tech side of things, over in the Discord channel. Let's see what this is. I said I'd respond to these on stream. Make sure I can. Get that. All right.
We've seen the lawmakers trying to ban 3D printers,
Okay, so the video is new 3D printer software will call the cops on guns.
ban printers capable of printing guns specifically. We've seen them try to make it illegal to have a 3D printer in the home with a minor, and we've seen them try to ban
I remember all these law changes.
And computer access to minors, all in the name of stopping 3D printed guns. Obviously, those
A little bit of an overreach. I think a lot of people are overreacting when it comes to 3D
major
printers.
roadblocks. But anti-gunners have been trying to take a new approach lately. If they can't regulate the plans themselves or ban the printers, they can try and make the printers useless. Or at the very least, make it so that the printers alert the authorities to come raid your house if you print a single suspected gun part.
That's a little bit effed. This reminds me of when the 2D printers have like little microcode if you try to print a $2 bill or something like that.
Welcome back to the channel. There are a lot of people who saw the advent of 3D printed guns as the beginning of the end for gun control, and it's a fair point. It's pretty hard to regulate what people do in their own homes when plans for those 3D printed guns have been ruled as protected under the First Amendment.
Big fan of Defense Distributed, by the way.
Used for, as I highlighted in a video about rebels fighting against a military coup in Myanmar.
Okay, one thing I should let you know before I continue. I don't talk about it a lot on stream. Well, not as stream, I talk about it a little bit more, but not really on TikTok and many of the social media. I have 3D printed a few firearm stuff and all that. I like to do it out of the purpose of what is the viability of doing this kind of thing. And let me tell you, some of those 3D printed designs are durable. Like, I think, what was it? One of my buddies told me he managed to pump 2,500 rounds of 5.56 through an AR before the lower cracked. The rest of the gun's the typical stuff, but the lower is that. So, yeah, they're very capable of doing this.
And actually doing some damage. I would think that that's what they're afraid of here. 3D printed guns are rebellion, and rebellion is the true spirit of America.
Can't stop the signal now.
But folks in the gun control world have figured out
that
printers require software. And so now they've turned to software engineers to prevent people from printing gun parts and even possibly making those printers tattle on you if you try to. But before I get into the details, this video is brought to you with the help of Home Title Lock.
2D printers allow you to, if you try to photocopy $1 or something like that, it actually will set up some microcode so that you can't copy it properly.
I just learned about a seriously terrifying new scam that literally allows people to steal your home house, steal your information online, find out that point, deal with. Security 2 jumps in with their team of triple lock protect that encryption. Again,
God damn, how long is this ad?
Make this snitching software. First, cloud-based 3D printing management platform 3D Printer OS has partnered with Montclair State University and their Making and Innovating for X Lab, or MIX for short, to try and create the algorithm to identify 3D printed gun parts. Print and Go, another company, has launched something called 3D Gunt, which is software that completely blocks a printer from printing gun parts. They've compiled a list of the most
agree with this, by the way,
or so-called ghost guns, and plan to target those systems specifically.
I understand the arguments for this, but I don't like this.
Complaints about the so-called misuse of their hardware, according to 3dprint.com. According to the site, building on these efforts, 3D Printer
This is a big reason why we use open source 3D printers.
Develop an algorithm to detect
proprietary software like they have in 2D printers allow for this kind of stuff.
This partnership hopes to boost safety and regulatory compliance. By leveraging the expertise of both organizations, the project seeks to develop a tool that can assist manufacturers, regulators, educational institutions like K-12 schools and universities, and law enforcement agencies.
So here's a problem that I have with this. Like it or not, code is free speech. That is my view on the whole thing. Code is free speech. Now, the issue becomes when you turn that code into a tangible item. I don't like when people bar someone's ability to study, use, manipulate code. I'm a big open source advocate in that way. It's a big reason why all my 3D printers are Prussias. They're open sourced. And I plan to get that new Prusa Core XY printer in the near future as well when they come out. But this is also a big reason why I've been saying for a long time that I'm weary of proprietary 3D printers like the Bamboo Labs. I hear great things about the printer itself. But if I don't have the ability to control the entire software and study, verify, audit the code, they can do things such as this. Now, I'm completely understanding of the mindset a lot of people have with, the whole ghost gun argument and things like that. I completely understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, in many places, this is legal. Especially in many states in the U.S., whether you like it or not. Go look up zip guns, for example. My grandfather used to tell me he made those all the time. A firearm is actually a very simple device to create. You don't need a 3D printer for it. You can just go to the hardware store, put together a few parts, and make it.
In monitoring and controlling the distribution of potentially dangerous components. Once the algorithm is developed, they plan to code the software to alert the main users of the printer that it's being used to make ghost guns, and then possibly even alert authorities. What it doesn't do is determine whether or not you're actually a prohibited person, a gunsmith, a hobbyist, or live in a free state where you can print whatever the hell you want. It doesn't conduct a background check or check a license. You know, they want to invade your privacy, but only their way. There's
the other thing is, sorry to pause this video so much. What about false positives, like you're making a prop gun? How many people cosplay, like for Deadpool, for example, 3D print, realistic looking, firearms, but it's a prop gun? How will it know the difference? What 3D printer would you recommend for making minifigures at a reasonable price? A lot of the resin printers. Resin printers are where you're going to want to go for minifigures. Creality has some inexpensive resin printers. Elegoo Mars. There's quite a few out there. But resin is where you're going to be looking at it. Now, bear in mind, let me give you this little precaution here. Resin, make sure you're in a well-ventilated area for it. That resin smell is nasty, can make you lightheaded and all of that stuff. But when it comes to minifigures, resin printers are by far the best when it comes to that. They're a little bit messy. Get some gloves. There's plenty of videos out there like, what is it, CNC Kitchen, I think it is? Has a lot of great videos out there. Resin is really great for a lot of that stuff.
Software doesn't care that you spend your hard-earned money on this equipment, have a license, or anything else. They only care about being the morality police.
Resin burns flesh, very toxic.
And to them,
Some
if
resin,
you are printing a
yes.
gun, you might as well be a Nazi criminal. Now, 3D Gunt has already taken their software a step further. They already have their own algorithm to detect gun parts and gun files. The software creates a database of these files and blocks them all from any printer with the software on it. Doesn't matter if you have downloaded the files, put them on a flash drive, it detects them, shuts it down. It also uses AI to recognize new and modified designs to continually add to the database, and absolutely nothing could go wrong with that. And
how is it using AI? Is it on the printer or on the slicer? The software would have been helpful when I was running my university's makerspace. In certain cases, I can see the point for it, but this is going to do more harm than good. Like I was saying, prop guns, toy guns. How's it going to know the difference? Or, my DEF CON badge here. This was for the DEF CON shoot. It's a rubber band gun. At what point is it going to define what is and isn't a gun? It's not like AI is 100% correct.
On top of all of that, it logs and keeps records of every single print job for the authorities with the intention of allowing them to do a
That's
full
an invasion of
audit
privacy.
of every machine and see your every activity on that printer. Basically already assuming that if you have a 3D printer, you're trying to be a criminal. It also uses cameras to monitor print jobs in real time and immediately stops the printer if anything remotely gun-shaped is detected. The company
How is this going to reasonably function inside of a 3D printer? Think about it this way. Your average 3D printer is not that powerful in terms of compute. It's usually a very basic CPU that can do one line of code at a time because it's doing G code. In order to get my printer to do cameras and everything like that, I have to append a Raspberry Pi to read all that. You would need to have a basic full-on computer able to do AI processing and everything. This is going to be
say that
expensive.
this is their way to ensure that 3D printing technology is used safely and ethically without banning it altogether. In reality, the software violates Americans' privacy to treat them all like criminals and prohibited persons. Violating people's rights in the name of ethics and safety. So what we have is two companies making software to stop people from printing things they don't want them to print, whether they're in a state where it's legal or not. They're planning to target and market this software to some of the printer manufacturers whose models are most often
do it
used
bit
for
by
3D
bit.
printing
No, you really
guns.
can't.
We have no idea if those
Because it only
companies
has
will
enough
take up this
processing to
software,
do the
but I'm
one
sure
thing
they'll
at a
be
time.
pressured into it either by special interest groups or government officials. If they choose to use the software, they are
It's an
probably
Arduino,
unlikely
basically, in
to
most 3D
disclose that.
printers.
So then some schmuck spends however much money on a 3D printer, because they ain't cheap, and gets it home, isn't able to use it, and maybe even ends up with the cops at his door, all because someone in Silicon Valley in a college lab doesn't think that you should be able to use your property in a certain way, and thinks that firearms are a plague in America. When nosy busybody Karens are the much bigger threat. The co-director of the University Mix Lab says, "This partnership allows us to explore the intersection of technology and public safety. We are excited to contribute our knowledge to develop a system that can make a real difference in identifying and mitigating risks associated with 3D printed firearms." But really, that's just code for, we want to stop fellow Americans from engaging in their constitutional rights, and we want to violate other rights in order to do it. The good thing here is that if someone is developing this tech, someone else will likely stand up to build the opposite and ensure that.
So this goes into a lot of times where I say things that just because you can, should you? That is the question that I often ask people. Just because you can do something, should you do this? This, I think, is a problem where there is no perfect solution. I'm going to be honest. Yes, gun violence is a problem. But there is such a gray area with this. There is such a gray area with this. And the amount of hardware that it would require for this to actually work in a 3D printer, they would need to have a separate computer, able to do AI processing, so there's probably going to be some kind of a GPU, because they're talking about a camera, so there's going to be some kind of, I guess, object recognition or something like that. Most 3D printers are basically just a powerful Arduino, doing one line at a time. That's why they're so inexpensive. They're not full-fledged computers. They're not an ARM CPU or anything like that. Yeah, it could be abused for a lot of other things.
Some 3D printers remain free. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this video.
So, this reminds me overall of the same problem where I told people many times when they're like, we should do biometric recognition before you can fire a handgun. And I would tell them all the time, like, do you know how much abuse a handgun goes through? Just think about a police officer in the middle of a firefight. Let's take a legitimate use case of a person that anyone would be okay with in the case of them owning a firearm, using a firearm, believing that they're trained to use the firearm properly, even though we know that's not really true in many cases based on history. But we'll go with that. Do you know how many things can go wrong with a biometric scanner? You're talking about an electronic device. Think about how many times you've had a failure with an electronic device. the false acceptance rate of a biometric sensor, things like that, that is something that needs to be considered. Now, you take like the average, like Glock 19, or is it the Glock 23, whatever the cops use, okay? Drop that in mud, get that in a heavy rainstorm. A cop shot, has blood on his hand. Let's be real here. These are situations they can be in. How many different things? Yeah, just cut the finger. Like, yeah, all these different situations. The amount of times my phone doesn't recognize my finger. Exactly. Just think about how many times you failed your own biometric on your own damn phone or your laptop if you have it. Now, in a life or death situation where a firearm is usually used, that will not make sense. This is one of those times where I tell people tech isn't always a solution, and I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect solution for problems like this. Yes, gun violence is a problem, but it's not a problem I think that can be solved at this point with an AI on a 3D printer that leaves so much gray area there. Because, for example, you have people like me that legally can produce firearm parts in my state, and we do it for research purposes. My friend had a haircut and shave. His phone didn't recognize his face. Not the first time I've heard that. But needless to say, I think this is created by people that don't actually. Well, companies go into cloud, then on premise. Answer that in a sec. Let me finish this. This is one of those things where I think people need to step back and have the reality of the situation. A lot of times, these kind of ideas, like putting 3D printer software on to monitor that your 3D printer is making a gun and then call the police and, all that, is a situation of somebody's in an echo chamber and doesn't realize the many shades of gray that are out there. But furthermore, this is why I also am a proponent of open source software, because we don't want companies to manipulate what we can do with our hardware. Well, companies going to cloud, then off premises. What do you mean by that? I'm not understanding. Do you mean like, what are companies going to cloud? Like, there's so many ways you can go. How is about education system about using pew pew? Wait, what? Was that even English? I feel like you had a typo there, or you were speaking in your phone. Um, can you clean that sentence up a little bit so I can understand what you're saying? But Vampire sent a few videos. Are you ready for Windows in the cloud? It's the next one. Doot, doot, doot. All right. So Windows in the cloud. If this is used in an event where law enforcement raids a home, wouldn't this go to court for rights violation? Potentially. Potentially speaking. Like, if you're in a state legally where you can do this, yeah, it's going to be a huge violation of your privacy rights. But I think a printer would also disclose that they use this kind of system in the first place. All on cloud is better, or on-prem to save money and scaling. All right, before we get into this video, pardon my coughing. There's trade-offs. If you have it in the cloud, you no longer are liable for the infrastructure that you are building, in the sense that you don't have to worry about the hardware. You don't have to worry about procurement costs, and then as you need to scale, timing all of that stuff in. But if you have your own hardware and everything, you can control that a little bit better. There are pros and cons to that. I think more pros go towards hosting things in the cloud, especially if you're trying to scale. You need another server? Click. You need another, storage unit? Click. You need to do all that with on-prem. There's a lot more that goes into that. Not to mention, if you own your own hardware and everything like that, you got to worry about redundancy, whether you're in the cloud or you're in on-prem. So you're going to have your DC, your data center, on-prem. Now you need to think about your backup site. Do you want a cold site, a warm site, a hot site? Basically, what that means is that a cold site, you have the infrastructure, nothing's there. You got to load it all up and get it ready. How long is it going to take you to rack and set up? When it comes to a warm site, it means the equipment's there. It's all set up, but there's no data. So you got to bring that data in. Now, a hot site is, well, it's all ready. It's good to go. Flip the button. We're good. But you got to think about all that. Plus the costs that go into that, plus the scouting for the sites with the risks and everything that go on there, the acceptable loss of everything, the insurance, all of that. It's another facility. So there's a lot of overhead that comes into owning your own stuff. Whereas I host my stuff in AWS East 2. I want to have a failover in East 1. Now I need to go into Europe so I can go into AWS EU West 1, I think it is. You know, you can easily click that over and have everything transfer very fast. Because if you have on-premise, you got to worry about your ISPs having 2-3 providers at any given time for failover. There's a lot more that goes into running an on-site, thing. And so there's trade-offs to both. Whether it's better is a decision of what is the business prioritizing on. More times, it's about money. So they're going to move to the cloud. Australia, with I say certain words, I could get banned. Wow. I'm sorry you don't have freedom of speech. On cloud is better. Okay. The window of the cloud. Education about using firearms is important. I do believe it is important to at least understand how they function, how they work, because I think the problem is with a lot of children is they treat firearms like they're a toy because they get on Call of Duty, they click a button and then they get to shoot. A lot of kids, and I would say even some adults, don't have proper respect for firearms. And I think that's a big thing. I think a lot of people, I mean, sometimes we jokingly refer to them as our fun little toys and everything, but I think when it comes to a lot of the people in gun culture, there is a severe amount of respect for the fact that this is a tool and a tool of death. And put in the right hands, it can defend a life. Put in the wrong hands, it can take a life. But also, again, in the right hands, it can feed a life. Hunting. And whether you like it or not, hunting is an essential part of the circle of life. And if you don't believe me, go look up all the stories about overpopulation with deer and how they actually suffer and why hunting is a necessity in order to keep these populations in check, especially when there's no apex predator, such as a wolf or something that knocks out a lot of the deer population. It's the circle of life. Remember FPS Russia? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that dude. That was a fun guy to watch. I used to watch his stuff quite a bit. Half bone. I think that's mostly bone. Okay, so let's see. What's this video? Are you ready for Windows in the cloud? Is this going to be like Azure with the where Windows PC you have? In Australia, we have issues with kangaroo. Only certain people are allowed to hunt. Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about Windows is starting to roll out their cloud-only PC system. This is
We've
not
actually been
something
playing with this at
entirely
work.
new, but this is a step towards pushing Windows into the cloud and starting to normalize this. Let's go ahead and discuss this on this Windows Wednesday. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch to Linux. Of course, over here we talk about Linux, why we should switch to Linux, free and open source software. Effectively, all this boils down to two basic principles: privacy and control over your own systems. Well, in today's video, we are going to look at Windows is starting to roll out, in enterprise versions first, their cloud-only box. And we're going to talk about this, the history.
So I've actually been playing with this at work. We've moved over to using this. Because it's cheaper than AWS, and there are some advantages with using the Microsoft Windows Workspace or Windows, whatever the hell they call it. Because we can also have it controlled by Intune and everything like that. And it can always be running. So the issue with AWS, just before we get into the video, was if we had their cloud Windows PCs on, we couldn't make sure they're always up to date. Because once you log out, it would basically just put them in standby mode or something like that. So we had the issue of always keeping them up to date, that when we would do our Tenable scans, we'd find vulnerabilities, and patching them was a pain in the butt. Whereas with Windows, running on the Microsoft stuff, it was always up to date. So that was a nice advantage. And it's easier to manage the official Microsoft Cloud PC thing than it was the AWS version.
Origins and
What's
a
up
little
in
bit
Greece?
about where the direction could be going. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? If you like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe to the channel and leave us a like and a comment down below. And with that, let's go ahead and jump on in. So this boils down to an article released, and Ars Technica had a good write-up of it. So Windows 365 Link, this is their new little box. This is $349, and
It's a little bit different than what we use at work.
Cloud.
We use it as a
So
virtual
if you remember Windows
PC.
in the cloud, this is actually not a brand new concept. This was your PC in the cloud. This is called Windows 365. Now, as of right now, it is not for the end user. It is for business, for enterprise, for
There's a little bit of
frontline,
latency with it.
for government. And so you have a number of different options here you can look at. Now, there were rumblings last year around July of last year, 2023, that was talking about some people noticing some code in the consumer and home users for Windows 11, suggesting that this type of connection is in the works. So that was reported on a while ago, and we haven't heard anything about it since then. So over a year. And now we have this new box rolled out. So this little box is a very small, lightweight box. There is no GPU in there. We don't know what processor's in there. We know that they have 8 gigs of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage.
Well, it's a thin client.
It just runs a streamlined.
We'll probably explain it, but what thin client is, is it's basically just a small PC that all it does is load the operating system up and then boots up into that. Pardon me, I had a bone. So basically, a thin client PC is just a computer that has just enough resources to load the operating system and then remotely connects to whatever server is hosting it. So very often, if you've been in a corporate environment, you will see Citrix. Citrix was the big one that did a lot of this stuff. So you'd have a thin client device, it would boot up, and you have a clean version of Windows, or whatever operating system you're set up. So the amazing thing about having a thin client was, you have any issue, you shut down that box, turn it back on, boom, fresh version, because it loads it all from scratch, just pulling over the network. So what they're probably doing is pulling from Azure 365. So there's probably some things that are actually cached in there, just enough for the space, 64 gigs of memory, storage space, seems like enough.
Version of Windows, which only serves the purpose to connect you to the internet. There is a little bit of hardware acceleration for when you're doing video, watching video. Video encoding is done on this box to save some of the cloud resources.
Yep.
Other than that, there's no GPU in this device. So the ultimate purpose of this is to have a workstation where you set it up, you push the button, and you are instantly on the cloud. Now, these, like tablets, are working on this always-on type model where you just click the power button, which, unlike the Mac, is on the front. You can click it without picking the thing up, wiggling it, wobbling it, possibly damaging cords behind it. The power button's on the front. Good job, Microsoft engineers. You know how to engineer something. It has a single USB port on the front. It has 2 USB-A ports on the back, 1 USB-C port on the back, and Ethernet port, presumably gigabit or higher. They didn't specify that. And it has obviously the power connections and a lock on it. So, of course, you can lock the thing down. Now, this type of concept, this mode of running a computer is not entirely new. In fact, even way back years ago when I was a college professor, this is how the colleges worked. Most businesses, this is how your business enterprise system works.
Okay. Here, we'll talk about a couple questions that are in the chat right now. And we'll get back to this. Seen the new Australian under 16 social media ban. The terms are insane. It just allows 24/7 monitoring of location and sale of that data. All people need ID linked to their profile and tracking turned on, and they will be tracked 24/7. That's effed. You do need a certain level of privacy online. Let's give you a specific. Let's give an example here. You have a woman in a domestic violence situation that needs to keep anonymous about her situation because if she gets outed that she's trying to get help or something like that to flee, what do you think's going to happen to her? That violent partner ain't gonna like it. So I don't agree with these kind of laws. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. Some of the worst travesties in history in terms of the laws that have been passed have all been under the guise of protect the children. How about parents, do your freaking job and be a parent? You don't want your kids on social media? Then don't give them devices that get them on social media. My best friend, she's an amazing mother. She only just gave her oldest kid a phone. And it's a basic Android. She can call me. She can call her mom. She can call her grandma. That's about it. But I also know that she's been raised well enough to know right from wrong when it comes to social media and things like that. Well, the problem is they're trying to find an end run around, trying to find ways to control you. Everyone says they want, to protect the children, but at the end of the day, at what point do we understand the damn responsibility is the parents? And honestly, I would argue at a certain point, when do you hold the parent responsible? And look, I did some stupid things when I was on social media when I was 12, 13, years old, even 10. Like, straight up, I was on AIM. And I remember there were, please stay in frame, the editor says. I remember when trying to remember, how do I phrase the story? I was like 9, 10 years old. There's always been creepy people online. My parents taught me, anyone tries to approach you or do anything and you don't recognize them, let us know. I remember I was like 9, 10 years old. Out of the blue, get an AIM message, someone really trying to, weasel their way in and try to groom me. I had the common sense to go, that ain't one of my friends. These are things I shouldn't be involved in or hearing. Immediately grab my dad, tell him what's going on. He hops on the computer and basically just shit stalks them and all that. But I think that we have become too comfortable with giving kids iPads and everything like that and forgetting how to parent. We're not teaching kids common sense with a lot of things. I think that kids should have the right to be online. But I also think that parents are the person that should be responsible for if they should or shouldn't be on the internet. And we'll be completely honest and say some parents shouldn't be parents. Every child deserves a parent, but not every parent deserves a child. Does that make sense? There are some god-awful parents out there that should never have kids. But I don't think government should be in the position of acting as your parent. And that's essentially what they're doing. And with this whole, like, requiring an ID and everything, it's basically an end run around getting the adults to have to be able to prove who they are and get them tracked as well. It's a little bit dystopian. But, yeah. It's just Dev was asking, have you noticed any change in your ad analytics? People were saying Twitch is an adpocalypse. They made an hour-long video explaining everything about it and shut the entire argument down with simple logic. I enjoyed it very much. I was actually watching that video before I started here. So, the long and short of it is, I think I touched a little bit on this in the last stream, because I was gone for a week while this whole thing was blowing up. But I was watching YouTube here and there while I was in the shower and, in Europe and everything like that. So, the long and short of it is, I'm going to give you the cliff notes of it. A few weeks ago, Asmongold got banned from Twitch for saying some reprehensible things. He apologized on YouTube, admitted that was a real head-up-ass moment, and honestly, out of all apologies I've seen on YouTube, it was probably one of the most sincere. No ukulele required. And this caused, I think, a domino effect. Because Asmongold got banned for 2 weeks. Rightfully so. He said some reprehensible things. But then it got people to say, hey, Hassan Piker said a lot of reprehensible things, and there was Frogan and all this, and I kind of looked at all this and I'm like, you know what? They're right. They did say some reprehensible things. Not going to go into all that. You can find plenty of videos about that. I'm just giving you the Clip Notes version. And there was this issue of double standards. So a lot of people started going after advertisers, directly to them and saying, hey, this kind of thing is happening. Now, advertisers want to advertise where they want their dollars best spent, and they also don't want to be associated with certain things. That's a big reason why a lot of advertisers are pulling out of Twitter, because they're finding their ads are placed next to a lot of bigotry. So people stopped advertising there. People are stopping posting on Twitter altogether. A lot of them are going to Blue Skies. A lot of them are going, wherever. Okay. And I really think that, Thor did touch on a lot of great points. I only got like 15 minutes into the video before I switched over. So, there is, I wouldn't say an adpocalypse coming around, but there is a reckoning. Because Twitch has allowed a few things to go on for far too long that should have been taken care of, that were their own violations of Twitch policy. And they've let some streamers go on and get a little bit too long of a leash. They gave them too much slack. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that double standards are correct in any way, shape, or form. You can like someone and still say, you know what, that wasn't right. But there's a site out here that is literally like, what, is it a Twitch? Is it from Twitch? Or is it a terrorist? Have you seen this site? There have been some really reprehensible things said by several different Twitch viewers, streamers. So, I do think that there isn't really an adpocalypse per se, but I think that there is a reckoning coming about where advertisers are wanting to hold Twitch accountable for the things that they are having their ads placed on, and they don't want to be near a certain topics. That is the reality of it. Look, like, let me put it this way. I'm in tech, okay? What good would, say, a makeup company have with advertising with me? Because I'm an ugly bastard, let's be honest here. That would not serve them any good. It's the same thing. Ad companies want to put their dollars where the advertisement is going to be best. But if you're also being placed near a streamer that happens to say, I don't know, platform a Houthi terrorist, I don't think anybody's going to be wanting to be near that. It's like, Dr. Pepper, buy Dr. Pepper, with the side of terrorism. Nobody wants that. No company wants to be associated with that way. And there's a big reason why YouTube is doing so well with ads is that they can actually really target those ads down really well. So those of you that don't know, Gitz, he is marketing his background. His background is marketing. Wow, words. I know speaking of English. He can drill you down so hard. Phrasing. Do I do drag? No, Yitz does. It's not even a joke. He can drill you down so hard to specifically target an ad to you based on criteria. And we can single out in extreme ways. To the point, some states, and even at the federal level, have restricted the ability and how you can target people for ads. It's scary how well they can target you. Google has all that information on you. Think about it this way. Google Chrome is the most popular browser, which then feeds that information into their SEO and their Google search engine, which then is used for ads. It's YITZ. I would laugh if ads get added to Blue Sky and get removed on the same day. So ads aren't really going to become in a Blue Sky. They've already talked about this, and they said that they're not planning to add ads. They're going to look at alternative sources of revenue because the issue is it's a decentralized system. How does one guarantee that you're going to have an ad displayed when somebody's running their own PDS server? So, but yeah, I haven't really looked at my ad analytics, but then again, I don't get paid shit from ads. I get paid like $2 maybe at most per month, because I'm still a small fish in this pond. Now, between me and you, my audience, it would be wonderful, if one day I make enough money where this could potentially be a second job. But I do this as a hobby. If I get to that point, great! Lovely! I can supplement my income, which will probably end up just being thrown into more tech, let's be honest here. I'm a slut for tech. But I've not really noticed much in the difference. I mean, I still haven't gotten paid from YouTube because I still need to get like a few thousand views and stuff like that before I get paid anything on YouTube. It'll eventually happen one day. But that's not why I do this content. I do it because I want to connect with my community and everything like that. I want to give you educational content that help you all better enter the IT and cybersecurity field and get the views of what a professional thinks on different topics, like kernel level anti-cheat that I recently made a video on, if any of you are curious about that. It would be nice one day if I make enough money to get a new rifle. Shotgun, maybe. But... Let's see, what did the bot say? Coming soon to a chat near you. In a world where ads are elusive and tags can doom your stream, Chief Geek 3D's chat is a wild ride. From flip phone parenting to the adpocalypse debate, our heroes navigate the digital jungle. Will political tags be their downfall? Or will they find solace in Chief's vast social media empire? Stay tuned for more tech, cybersecurity, and chill vibes. Hashtag Chief Geek 3D Chronicles. I love this bot. That's fun. But yeah, anyway. Wait till the ads roll out. Fifth ad on your stream today. Well, it plays them like every so often. So the honest truth is, what was it? Twitch gives me like a 50-50 split or something like that if I run a certain amount of ads, so I did just that. Could y'all tell me what the ads are? I did remove the political tag content. I only put the sensitive label for politics when I was doing my election content. You can pay me. Bro, you get paid more than I do out of this content. I can't wait until my new laptop comes, though. I've been waiting for that thing for a year. Gonna make some good content on that. Oh, I still gotta edit the video that I went to the airport to record. I actually went to the airport an hour out of my way so that I could record video on the Aerospace Village badge tracking planes. So I drove a whole ass hour to go to the airport just to use my badge and record content for y'all. Because the badge itself has like a 5-mile range. No planes are near my house during, only 5 miles. But if you put the antenna in, you get a 90-mile range. But I wanted to show you the badge working without the external antenna. So I drove all the way to the airport. I'm working on that video. I meant to edit it while I was in Europe, but I was drinking too much wine and enjoying way too much good food. But yeah. Anyway, back to the video. Australia lost a war against the emus. I forgot about that. I'm at least cheap in the grand scheme. Yeah. You're like a cheap date that likes Kamchatka vodka in the plastic bottle. But I think the vodka's cheaper than you. It was actually just the military is justifying a budget increase using the last of its hand.
Those days, though, we had a standard computer. It had Microsoft installed on it. It had the programs installed on it, but there was no data on it. There's effectively no hard drive storage on that. All of the storage and everything else, that was all in the it wasn't the cloud, it was the LAN network for the university. So you use a VPN from home to be able to access your files when you're not at home. That's, of course, what a VPN was created for.
Yep.
Not privacy on the internet necessarily. It was created to be able to access the network resources when you were not inside the network.
Yeah.
And of course, in those days, you had to buy the standard computer, although you could buy a little bit lower of a spec one, possibly, depending on what you're doing. And then each workstation just simply had the same shell of programs. You could log into any of the workstations on campus with your login, and everything would work just fine, and no data was stored locally.
Pretty
that
straightforward.
Really was effectively how things ran for a long time. What this approach is doing is the entire instance of your Windows is in the cloud. There is no software installed on this little thin line device. There is nothing on it except effectively an embedded Windows system serving no other purpose than to connect you to the internet and then go right on up into the cloud where you access a Windows 365, which is an entirely cloud-based system. So there's no power on system. Your Windows cloud-based is always powered on. And your workstation in this instance works effectively, as I said, like a tablet.
Yeah, this is a
All you
video
do
that
is you click the button,
Vampire
it's
Lord
instantly turned on, and now you
found.
can access your device. Now, what they do have differently
just
is they do
reacting
have
to
the
it.
ability to port your hardware up into that. So there is some virtual link between those. FIDO keys, like your YubiKey, works on this device. So if you're using that to verify 2FA on some given account, you can work that perfectly fine. There's no issues there. And so
It's basically like
with that,
RDP on steroids.
this is a new device
Remote
that is
desktop
rolling out.
protocol.
We have some pictures of it over here. You can see, look at this lovely power button right on the front, easy to get to. You can simply push it. I know that does kind of break.
There's
going to
be just enough I/O for a keyboard, monitor, and mouse,
but it is
and then a
practical to
couple
have the power
USBs like you
button
want
on
to do
the
a
front
printer
of
or
the
something like
device.
that.
Makes sense. Of course, they have their USB port there, and then on the back we have USB-C, 2 A's. We have a full HDMI. We have a full display port, Ethernet, and we have the power as well.
Pretty straightforward.
Now,
The
entirety of this right now is aimed currently towards your enterprise, your businesses, and looking at.
These will be great for call centers and stuff like that. Basically, a device where you want to keep it locked down, have a preset workspace that you can keep clean every time. The advantage of that is if that device or the system that they're operating on gets compromised, reboot, clean slate. Makes it very nice. There is a lot of advantages to the thin client model, but it doesn't work for a lot of different workloads.
Microsoft's actual page about this. You can go ahead, see if they actually have this thing here, and you saw this.
Works well for basic
I might
workloads.
buy one just for
Think like insurance companies.
Maybe we can get something like that. But anyway,
things that need high amounts of compliance
page.
and standardization.
What they're saying is that this has more security in it. It's obviously everything is cloud powered. It's more secure. There's no way to actually store data. In fact, your administrator can prevent you from being able to copy any data from your workstation onto a USB drive. Again, that is an enterprise feature you might want. You might be in a high sensitive work environment whereby you don't want people to risk stealing out data. I mean, we don't need some Snowden thing where an actual legitimate whistleblower actually legitimately gets out the data that you shouldn't be doing out to the public, but in this instance, the administrator, the IT person running the cloud infrastructure this connects to, can prevent the end user from being able to download any data onto the local device. So you have no control over this. This is about the IT management, and then, of course, their sustainability. It's Energy Star certified, created with 50% recycled
yada,
content,
yada, yada.
blah, blah. Certainly an energy saver. Now, they do have a video here. You can watch the video over there on YouTube. We're not going to go through that right now, but it's a 5-minute video. It's nice, informative, and in it they explain how you can log in. You set it up with either a phone app, or you set it up with a any other way that you're doing multi-factor authentication to get into your device. You can go ahead and get that all set up, and then everything works fairly flawlessly on your desktop. And then there's just some basic FAQs. Now, this again is for connecting your Windows 365, which as of right now is only for business sectors. However, as I said back in July of last year, there is some code embedded in Windows 11 that seems to suggest that they are working on a Windows 365 for consumers.
Wouldn't surprise me.
That really is the question that we have as we are looking at this type of technology.
Well, you look at it like the NVIDIA GeForce Now.
Every aspect of our computer is entirely at the hands of the company. Now, as long as we get to the point, or we don't rather get to the point where you have no control over your system, if we can always have in an offline mode a Windows computer sitting here, I can turn on if the internet's out, even the power's out, I can run it on battery for a while, I can turn it on, and I can do some local thing.
Ultimately,
as long as we always have that option, that's going to be good.
Software as a service,
I want to point out to the direction
pretty much where you make the most amount of money.
We look at the software packages. You can no longer buy a standalone Adobe software that will run on your system.
Nope.
It needs that internet connection. In fact, there's one channel I've talked about many times before. I think it was like JC Christina or something. I can't remember. He is a graphic designer, and he's like, I'm going to go up and hike on top of this mountain. I'm going to take my MacBook with me, and I'm going to go up there, and I'm going to work on the top of the mountain because it'll be a cool, trendy thing to do. He gets up there, realizes he cannot even launch his Photoshop to do the offline work he wanted to do because the system will not work without an internet connection.
DaVinci Resolve works offline.
Like obviously, you have the Office 365.
GIMP
there are
does.
offline components of that, but they do really prefer you to be on the internet. And even Windows 11 itself is getting to the point where it does not want you, and they're actively getting around those ways to set up a Windows 11 computer if you do not have an active internet connection. They want to force you to have an internet connection. They want to force you to have a Microsoft account.
You know why that is? What's the most valuable thing that is actually on the internet? It's your data. Companies want your data because that's the most valuable thing. So, if they require you to give up data, in order to use their product, that makes it profitable to them. Because you have to remember, Microsoft Windows allows you to use the product for free if they really want. How do they get around doing this? It can serve you ads in the operating system. Think about that.
Want to force you to have all of these online components. So it is the logical step, the logical progression by which we move from this Windows on your desktop to this Windows in the cloud.
These plantains are okay.
If the Windows 365 reaches the consumer and becomes more normalized, obviously there are people that this makes a lot of sense for. You know, buying one little $300 device for the person that simply needs to get on social media, check your email, and browse the web. That is a good device for that type of instance. The problem is
you're spending $300, you ain't going to be hooking up a device that's just going to sit there. You're going to go get a basic-ass Chromebook. That's my 2 cents on that. That makes a better buy.
Directly up. Number one, we need good internet. Here in America, that's not always a good thing you can get.
True.
But you also need a system which is completely out of your control. You can't install software on this. Windows 365, you can't install software.
Let's just gotta put chapters in.
You can't do anything else outside of.
See, I at least put chapters in my video.
Presumably, this means going back to that model where everything has to be curated by Windows. You can run the Adobe software because it's curated in the Windows Store.
Does he do any editing?
Coolprogram.exe that you have downloaded off
It
of
looks
the
like
internet,
it takes
even though you know it's legitimate,
one
or at
whole ass tape.
strongly suspect it's legitimate. We need to get to this point where we have those options to maintain that. And this is why I like Linux. As Windows is moving towards this slow progression to move you entirely onto cloud,
I could never talk this long without getting annoyed at
every
myself.
aspect of your computing life.
Because I know I'm going to say something wrong.
By the way, Microsoft controls the servers. They can see your data. They can spy on you. They can use AI to determine are you up to.
I don't know if y'all have noticed this. I have a little bit of a stutter.
Over there at the DOJ or something.
I want a
system that is perpetually offline. I want a system that's perpetually off of the internet as long as I want it to be. And I want a system that if I'm somewhere on a remote mountain, I can still boot up my laptop.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have.
So we get the whole thing. You're talking about how they have a device, all that. But there are reasons for this to actually work. But in a business setting, it's more so for a personal computer. Well, I guess we're going to have to see where that comes in. What's this other video that Vampire sent me? Don't be like Tuxedo. Oh, we're talking about Tuxedo computers.
Software licensing is always going to be a bit of a touchy subject in the FOSS world.
The little context here, Tuxedo Computers is actually a computer company that we can tell. Thanks. Don't make me self-conscious at all. Wait, wrong button. Please tell me y'all can hear my sounds that I do. Wait, it doesn't look like it's actually grabbing my sounds. Hold up. Can't hear. Oh my God, Jesus. All right, hold on. Audio application. No, it's application. Audio input capture? No. Output? No. Okay, so for some reason my Stream Deck decided to stop piping the sound in. That's great. Let me fix that. Hold up. That's just great. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Oh, this guy. C program. Oh, Elgato Stream Deck. Okay. So where the hell? Yeah, we got the plugin in. Elgato Stream Deck. Record pause. La 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 la. Yeah, I know all of that setting. Audio on OBS. Go to devices. Your okay. Hold on. Plugins. Accounts. Profiles. I just love when this just decides to not want to work. Because it was working for months and months and months on end. And of course decides, hey, yeah, we're just gonna screw with Chief. Oh. Are you freaking... I think I know what's happening. It's outputting to the wrong place. Hold on. place that I can set all the audio? Oh, they changed how this pipes out audio. That'll do it. So I wonder... You hear that? If so, I really hate the fact that it's going to make me have to change everything. I may have to go just without the sounds for a second, because I'm going to have to go through and flip all of that out. See, it used to be that I had to capture all the audio through the executable, and then it would do that. But now it looks like they have changed how it pipes out audio. Yeah, I'll have to play with that later. Alright, anyway. My first day on Pop OS or Linux in general. Nice!
It's kind of the foundation of the whole thing, you know, free and open source software. And recently, a big discussion was set off by Thorsten Lehmhuis of the Linux kernel in regards to a relatively small, but well-known enough name in...
So, for a little context here, Tuxedo Computers is another Linux boutique builder, similar to System 76, that makes some laptops and stuff that I was actually really looking at getting, possibly. It was down between them, Nova Custom, and System 76 for my next laptops.
Base Tuxedo Computers, a German computer retailer specializing in Linux machines. Also, they do the whole core boot thing as well. Now, whether they're a good company or a bad company, you like their products, you like their price, and all that stuff, not really relevant to what we're talking about today. Just know they are our focus. Now, this is the post that started everything. Today, I learned Tuxedo Computers released Linux kernel drivers for their machines under the GPL v3, which makes it impossible for competitors and distros to ship them pre-compiled, as that license is incompatible with the Linux kernel's GPL v2 only license. They did this purposely, allegedly, to keep control of the upstream pacing and want to relicense the code while upstreaming. You can't really say purposely, allegedly. Like, that's not a sentence structure that makes any sense.
Yeah,
also,
that's kind of weird wording.
This is a direct quote from the repo, so I wouldn't say it's allegedly when it's from someone high up in the company.
Yeah,
now, the screenshot he included just isn't
quoting
very
it, that's
useful.
not an
I don't
allegation,
know why
that's
this is the one he included. But at least he did include some links, making it a lot easier.
Let me see what that said. Successor to GitHub, blah, blah, blah. The project license is not compatible with the Linux kernel's own license, so thus the combination is not redistributable. The Linux kernel is GPL v2, and the kernel modules are GPL v3. As GPL v3 is incompatible with GPL v2, the combination of software cannot be upgraded to GPL v3 or redistributed on redistribution, as the case with the Linux kernel. Shipping this or getting this merged with the mainline kernel will not be possible without fixing the licensing of these modules first. Blah, blah, blah. Yep, that makes sense.
But at least he did include some links, making it a lot easier for me to go and get started.
So for those of you not aware, the GPL v2 allows for packaging even in proprietary settings. v3 doesn't allow that at all.
I don't know how this always happens. I really wish I did, but 4 years ago, an issue was made by Neil Gompa, licensing incompatibility between Linux kernel and these kernel modules in regards to drivers made by Tuxedo. I was looking into this project's kernel modules to figure out packaging it, and I discovered this project's license is not compatible with the Linux kernel's own license, thus the combination is not redistributable. The Linux kernel is GPL v2, and the kernel modules are GPL v3+, GPL v3 or later. As GPL v3 is incompatible with the GPL v2, when the combination of software cannot be upgraded to GPL v3 on redistribution, as is the case with the Linux kernel, which is GPL v2 only, shipping this or
this
getting
is one of the
this
big
merged
issues
into
you
the
come
mainline
into with
kernel
Linux's licensing.
will not be possible without fixing the licensing of these modules first. please can you relicense the modules to GPL v2 plus, GPL v2 or later to make it compatible with the Linux kernel. I suspect this was an unintentional incompatibility, and I hope this can be swiftly resolved. On the surface, that seems like a completely reasonable ask. Like System76, Tuxedo does have their own distro, that being Tuxedo OS, and when you buy a Tuxedo system, these modules are pre-installed, and you don't have to think about them. That's until you want to go and install a distro that isn't Tuxedo, and then you have to go and add these additional modules, and it's just a giant hassle. No one wants to do that, and if you're an NVIDIA user, you know all about this pain. Going to a distro that doesn't pre-install the NVIDIA drivers for you, and you have to go and work it out for yourself, that's annoying.
Big reason I like Pop OS.
But the problem is not exactly that simple. Now, the idea of merging these drivers into Upstream didn't actually come from that post. It came from an earlier issue in 2019, just called Upstreaming. What's the current status of merging this into the Linux kernel? Then, a year later, any updates, and nothing else. Then they moved over to GitLab, and that's the last post. Now, the first issue we saw from Neil did lead to something being done, a merge request being made, relicensing from GPL v3 to GPL v2 or later. But what's the deal with the whole GPL v3 or GPL v2 or later? Why can't you just go and take the GPL v3 code and then use it with the GPL v2 kernel? Well, you can. If you're not distributing it and you're just using it on your personal system, there's not really an issue. The issue is with distribution. In the GPL v2, there is this clause here. Each time you redistribute the program or any work based on the program, the recipient automatically receives a license from the original licenser to copy, distribute, or modify the program.
LinuxOS just allows you to
you may not impose any further restrictions on the recipient's exercise of the rights granted herein. You are not responsible for enforcing compliance by third parties to this license. The part we care about is this. You may not impose any further restrictions on the recipient's exercise of the rights granted herein. What does that mean? Well, if you have a license that is more restrictive than the GPL v2, as in it is restricting some of the rights granted by the GPL v2, that is not compatible. And restricting certain rights is the whole reason the GPL v3 exists. Now, you might frame it as protecting users' rights, but, you know, it is what it is. At the core of it, it is restricting certain rights by stopping a concept known as TiVoization, where what people were doing, what specifically TiVo was doing, was taking GPL software and running it on this box, where if you modified the software through DRM measures, the box would no longer function.
Oh, immutable. That's the word, not an amnesia. Immutable.
Whilst you could see the source code, if you tried to actually use modified software, you wouldn't be able to do so. And Linus never cared about TiVoization. He never considered this a problem. In fact, he doesn't even like the term TiVoization and looks at the concept as sort of a positive thing. And this is the reason why he likes the GPL v2. This is a positive trait of the license and why Linux was never relicensed as the GPL v3. Now, whilst they could go and say, I'm going to take the drivers and go from GPL
if it wasn't for the GPL v2, Linux wouldn't be as popular as it is today.
That creates the same problem, just for different people. Now the drivers would be compatible with the Linux kernel, but if there are people using the GPL v3 drivers in a GPL v3 compatible way, and now you go to GPL v2, now they have problems. The solution to this is GPL v2 or later. What this means is effectively it can either be used as GPL v2 code or GPL v3 code, depending on who wants to go and use the code. If you want to look at it in another sense,
is an interesting concept.
Basically dual licensing the code, but not just dual licensing the code.
It doesn't work for everything I need, but it's interesting. It's just immutable.
GPL v4, GPL v5, or anything else that might happen in the future.
You can reproduce a lot of your stuff a lot easier.
Once PR was made 4 years ago, it kind of just sat around with not much happening. There were some external contributors they did need to ask. Luckily, they didn't have many of them, and each of them said, okay, yeah, I'm totally fine with doing this. Go ahead and do so. Everybody signed off. So all of the external contributors and the company signed off on this happening. It just didn't happen, and it just sat around for 4 years. 3 years until moving over to the GitLab, and then a new issue being made over there. Now, this is the issue we originally saw being screenshotted, relicensed to GPL v2 or later, made by Salim B. And here we had the first comment from Werner Sembach. And rather than saying, okay, we should probably go ahead and do this, it was a different answer. We plan on upstreaming a first module of Tuxedo drivers, see here, which then will automatically get relicensed to GPL v2 upon sending it to the LKML. We do not plan to relicense Tuxedo drivers project directly, as we want to keep control of the upstream pacing. Therefore, this thread will be closed.
That makes no sense.
Hope you understand.
That's just a control freak issue.
Rather than taking the entire project and relicensing it, going ahead and only relicensing the parts that they are sending up to upstream to make sure it's compatible then, which, at least to me, seems like a lot of additional work to not really get much benefit. They say to control the pacing, so I guess the issue is they don't want people taking the driver and then trying to upstream it before it's ready. But I don't know who's actually going to go ahead and do that, because if it's not ready,
that doesn't make sense
then it's not going to get merged anyway. And why would they be accepting Tuxedo driver code from people that aren't related to the Tuxedo project?
It seems like a control freak issue.
Say, hey, this is not ready, what are you doing here? And that person will get blacklisted from the mailing list, and there's not many people who are going to try to go ahead and do that, so it seems like a really weird approach to take. It's not necessarily, like, bad. You're allowed to do this. It's just weird. Normally, relicensing the code like this would be basically impossible, but because most of the code is written by internal developers and the external contributors they have already signed off on doing so, you could do it, right? Like, it's doable. And I guess, in a sense, it's kind of like NVIDIA's open source kernel modules, where the development isn't done in an open source way. The development, for the most part, with the exception of, like, minor documentation changes, is done proprietary at NVIDIA. And then when they have a release ready, then they go and release the rest of it open source. This isn't as extreme as that, but I guess it's kinda similar. Now, there's more than one similarity with NVIDIA. Neil points out, this means you have a non-redistributable combination, GPL v3 or later, cannot be combined with GPL v2 only code, the license of Linux. No. With sending this code up to upstream, we automatically agree to relicensing it to GPL v2. As soon as we send code containing contributor contributions, we of course have to ask first. But this is not the case for the serious driver code. Legally, this is decided on a per line of code basis and not for the whole project. Yes, but this is not redistributable as is, which I presume is what...
What are they trying to accomplish by doing this convoluted way of doing this? It's all open source at the end of the day. You're just spending extra time to just, I don't know.
Shipping on Tuxedo computers. Now I guess I know what you mean. The situation is, since Tuxedo Drivers is an out-of-tree DKMS package, it is not distributed as part of the Linux kernel code, but dynamically loaded as separate binaries. Therefore, no source code licensing compatibility is required. Also, on Tuxedo OS, we install it as a DKMS package and have not merged it into the Tuxedo kernel code. For a more prominent example, it's the same way the proprietary NVIDIA driver is distributed, which of course has no code license compatibility to the Linux kernel whatsoever. And that comparison is going to come back to bite them. Now, in the past, they have attempted...
So you're an open source company, known for making Linux laptops, an open source operating system, and you're comparing yourselves to NVIDIA, who literally got the finger from Linus Torvalds for how they package their drivers.
Certain pieces of Tuxedo drivers upstreamed into the kernel, as we can see through this LKML post here. But after that attempt was made, it was then tagged as low priority heavy weight. And 2 months ago, a section was added to the README regarding upstreaming. The code, while perfectly functional, is not currently in an upstreamable state. That being said, we started an upstreaming effort for the first small part of the keyboard backlight control for the Series 16 Gen 1 and Gen 2, which will be followed by more once it is accepted. If you want to hack away at this yourself, please follow the following precautions and guidelines to avoid breakages on both software and hardware level. Involve us in the whole process. We mostly can't share documentation, but we can share answers. Code interacting with the EC, which is most of Tuxedo drivers, can break devices and therefore must be ensured to only run on compatible and tested devices. And if you use Tuxedo driver as a reference or code snippets from it, a code developed by that person at Tuxedo Computers must be included in your upstream commit. And following that addition being made, this issue was closed for now. Now, everything we've talked about so far happened before Thorsten brought this to anyone's attention. This is the past 4 years of backstory to get here.
That's a lot of story for licensing
issue was
to get through.
Add SPDX license identifiers and be honest in module license. SPDX is just a standard way of saying what license a project is using. According to the Linux kernel docs, GPL as a parameter to module license means the module is licensed under GPL version 2. This is not true for this source code, which is GPL v3 or later, so mark the code with the SPDX license identifier GPL v3+, and fix the module license macro usages accordingly. Note that this change enforces license compliance at least a bit, because some kernel code is only available to modules with a GPL v2 compatible license. And this is where the problems started to happen. So effectively, what has been happening is the Tuxedo drivers have been, I guess, masquerading as GPL v2 code. They are GPL v3 code, but they said they were GPL v2. And this allowed them to do things in the kernel that only GPL v2 compatible code is allowed to do. Now, I've had a number of disagreements about this. I don't think they are being malicious here. I think this is a matter of incompetence. I don't think they realized what they were doing and kind of just left it as it is. And what further adds to this fact is the response from Werner. Thanks for the hint. Since GPL v3 is not a valid define according to the list and module license is optional, I will just remove the macro for the time being and see if anything breaks. Oh, it's not optional.
What?
Had to be reopened.
Jesus.
Can you rebase this patch on the current main? Updated accordingly, I aligned all the module license strings to be equal. I had GPL3 plus once, and otherwise GPL v3, now using the latter consistently. Some of the drive-by cleanups dropped as these were applied separately in main. Now, this does say merged. However, that is not entirely accurate, because very shortly after, it got reverted. Revert, add SPDX license identifiers, and be honest in module
until
license.
The legal stuff
Revert
is sorted
for the time
out.
being
Jesus.
until the legal stuff is sorted out. By legal stuff, what he actually means is, if you make this change, the driver no longer works, because it's been masquerading as GPL v2 code, and it kind of relies on being GPL v2 code compatible. With Thorsten saying it best, wondering why that happened. Did they only notice now that the drivers do not compile anymore because they use GPL-only symbols, which are inaccessible for any non-GPL v2 compatible module? Now, we have a bit of a problem, because the person who made this merger isn't just some random drive-by contributor. They have a history of contributing to the Linux kernel, and they want to make sure the problem gets resolved. So they went and did the next best thing, or you might even argue, the better thing. Put known GPL offenders in an array. Hello. The kernel modules provided by Tuxedo on their driver repo are licensed under GPL v3 or later, this is incompatible with the kernel's license and so makes it impossible for distributions and other third parties to support these at least in precompiled form, and so limits user experience and the possibility to work on mainlining these drivers. This incompatibility is created on purpose to control the upstream process, as documented by Thorsten. Note that the pull request that fixed the module license invocations to stop claiming GPL v2 compatibility was accepted and then immediately reverted for the time being until the legal stuff is sorted out. And then the second part of the patch set basically tells the module loader effectively to blacklist these modules from the GPL v2 part of the project because they're not being honest about being GPL v2.
Oh, geez.
So I guess we've got to fix it upstream alongside some known other offenders, but the majority of the list is from Tuxedo.
Imagine this could have all been avoided if they had just used the GPL v2 license. This is actually kind of turning my opinion against considering a Tuxedo computer.
One here.
It feels like incompetence. This doesn't feel like intentionally malicious stuff.
I think this may have blown up a bit more than they had expected, and they didn't really think they'd have to fix this as quickly as they needed to. So Werner also responded as well. As already being implied by that commit message, this is sadly not an issue that can be sorted out overnight. We ended up in this situation as module license GPL on its own does not hint at GPL v2 if one is not aware of the license definition table in the documentation. It was and is never our intention to violate neither GPL v2 nor GPL v3, and we are working on it. Kind regards, Werner Sembach. Now, before you do anything involving macros and functions and all that stuff, I would highly recommend reading the documentation. Again, this sort of links back into my theory that this is incompetence and not malice. To which Greg Crower-Hartman responded, "That's why it is documented, to explain this very thing. Please don't suggest that documenting this is somehow not providing a hint. That's not going to fly with any lawyer who reads any of this. Sorry, Greg KH."
Yep, I have to agree with
the way
that.
he signs off every single message. Like, I don't know what it is. It just feels like he just is sick of everyone every time he signs off a message, which probably isn't too far from the truth. Now, Werner tried to explain the situation. Yes, we know this is a problem. I'm a developer, not a lawyer. Didn't realize this was a problem until a couple of days ago. We're working on this. People are calling us a liar and saying that...
But here's the reality. If you're a developer, you need to have understanding of the software licensing. I work in cybersecurity. I have to understand the software licensing. I work in corporate. I have to understand the software licensing. I have to know the cases that can be used to different things. I had to be aware of the Terraform changes, as well as Docker changes, that prevented us from using it in a corporate setting because of how large the company I worked for was. So we had to switch over to Rancher and Tofu to do the same things. They're open source. Because the company I work for didn't want to pay the licensing for Terraform and Docker to use those things. At least Docker desktop. So I don't buy the excuse that you're a developer, not a lawyer. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand the licensing. There's tons of documentation out there. This really puts Tuxedo in a bad light.
Trying to do this maliciously, and can you just give us a time frame to resolve the license issue before this is merged? Before this...
You had 4 years. 4 frickin' years.
Changes merge, that if they updated their kernel, they'd have to go and ship a modified kernel to go and make this work on Tuxedo OS, but anyone on any other distro would have their Tuxedo computer basically just not work anymore. And Greg basically didn't want to engage. I would strongly suggest you work with your lawyers now, as they are the ones that need to resolve this properly. Thanks, Greg KH. Now, Werner kept trying to do it like, hey, yeah, we know it's a problem. Yeah, can we get like some time frame? Is it going to land in the next kernel version? Like, when is this going to become a problem that we need to deal with yesterday? This led to a fairly big discussion that you can go and check out for yourself, but the important thing is this led to a very, very sudden change. Relicense all in-house code to GPL v2 or later. Turns out that bricking all of your customers' computers, might be a way to get it fixed overnight. Now,
Wait, what?
The Linux kernel wouldn't go out of their way.
Hold up. I missed that part.
GPL v2 or later. turns out that bricking all of your customers' computers, might be a way to get it fixed overnight. Now, normally the Linux kernel wouldn't go out of their way to, you know, break user systems and break things they're doing. But, like, when legal issues are involved, when licensing issues are here, and it seems like a license has been violated for over 4 years, probably even longer than that, they're gonna have to deal with it basically immediately. This is a very different situation than, it removes some Wi-Fi card that someone happened to be using. No. That's not what we're talking about here. This is much worse than that. And I want to make it clear, I don't think at all they were malicious in this situation. I think for all of this time, they had no idea there was a problem. And yes, they were informed that there could have been a problem 4 years ago by someone who is also not a lawyer. So if the not a lawyer is talking to the not a lawyer, I get why you don't.
So there's a reason why I license my software I do as GPL v3, because I don't want it to be packaged in proprietary methods and things like that. I want you to build it and do the tinkering yourself. But you don't need to be a lawyer to understand this stuff, as he's saying, and that makes total good sense. This feels like total incompetence from their end.
There is a problem here. Now, should he have talked to his lawyers? Should they have talked to their lawyers and, like, go...
Abso-frickin-lutely.
This never should have been a problem, but I don't think this was malicious. I do genuinely think it was just a case of incompetence. But what do you think? Do you think it was malice? Do you think it was incompetence?
I think it was incompetence.
Tuxedo system? I would love to know. So if you like the video...
The sad part is, I was actually thinking of getting a Tuxedo computer. I was seriously doing that. But this kind of thing kind of soured my entire taste of wanting to get a Tuxedo computer. Let's see. What's this other video you got? Oh, this is the Linux experiment. Love this channel.
So, Google Chrome officially disabled a lot of useful extensions. Ad blockers will
No, it's fine. I wanted to have a chill stream today because I wasn't in the mindset for gaming or anything right now because I'm still kind of sick, so this worked out perfectly, actually, Vampire.
And you will see ads.
Which, by the way, if anyone else wants me to check out different videos and stuff over time, feel free to drop it in the Discord or ping me on Blue Sky or Mastodon.
In short, Google decided to limit the freedom of extension developers on their platform, but also of end users, for security or probably more likely monetary reasons, because ads are how Google
F1 drivers
makes
on
their
the
money.
Sphere.
So if you still use that piece of junk that is Google Chrome, it is high time that you look at something else. And we'll explore a bunch of alternatives today, whether they will be affected by Google's change in how good extensions can be, and also a few cool features that they offer. Oh, and we'll also look at this message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Code or Not.
Your video is brought to you by Squarespace, not mine.
So the description, so domain name purchase. So obviously Firefox and its derivatives will be what you want to look out first. It's been around forever. It's the OG browser that killed Internet Explorer by adding tabs and features that Microsoft just did not want to add. And until Google started pushing Chrome and making Firefox less compatible with other websites
so
intentionally,
Firefox, main browser that I use all the time.
Properties. This was the browser.
So this is basically just what? The recommendations of different browsers since the whole, like... What was it, the change that they made? Basically, that's breaking all the ad blockers and everything on Google Chrome, if I remember correctly. What's this?
Now, there's also an interesting alternative that I tried recently, which is called, stupidly, Florp. So that's the...
What the hell kind of name is that? Florp! It sounds like the web browser they would have made in Rick and Morty. Florp!
worst name I've ever heard for any web browser or probably any program, but the name doesn't matter. What matters is the application has a lot more settings over the default Firefox version. It is more private by default, but it also has some changes that you can implement with, for example, the horizontal tab bar or the vertical tab bar, depending on what you prefer. I much prefer the tabs up top, but some people...
Yeah, I'm still partial to tabs up top. I'm an old-fashioned dude. I remember when browsers just started having tabs with, what was it, Netscape Navigator, if I remember?
them in a sidebar over there.
Does anyone else remember the nightmare that was Internet Explorer 6? If so, sorry for that PTSD moment.
Also can change a bunch of settings on how things are displayed, how the theme works, website appearances. You also have a browser sidebar.
No,
here
you
that
don't.
can customize.
It's a lie.
That will open certain things in a sidebar here. They have a notes feature, but you also have basically all the usual bookmarks and stuff like that that appears in here instead of being pop-up windows like on Firefox, which I quite like here. You also have the option to have workspaces, meaning you can change between a home or a work workspace. I personally don't use that, but some people like to triage their tabs if they have plenty of tabs open, and this is supported here. So that's really cool, and I really like it. Performance-wise, Florp is absolutely similar to Firefox. It seems just a tiny bit smoother when scrolling. That's probably because its smooth scrolling is better, but that's about it. And it's, of course, completely open source. Another browser that people recommended is Zen browser, which is also a Firefox-based thing. It's also open source. It's still also in development, so it's brand new. But it does perform better than the base Firefox if you pick the specially optimized build of the browser that is specifically optimized for modern CPUs. And it does result in a bit better performance in certain web-based benchmarks compared to Florp or to the base Firefox. Slight improvements, but still improvements. I personally don't like the fact that it forces you to have vertical tabs here.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the vertical thing.
You do have to have those vertical tabs. You can decide to not expand them, so they're closed and you only see them on hover, or you can expand them completely. I don't like this. I like my tabs up top. I haven't seen a solution to do that, but they do have other settings and improvements that look pretty cool. So for people who like this configuration, I think Zen is actually pretty cool, and it also does go further in terms of performance, which is pretty nice. All in all, if you want to escape the limitations that Google is placing on extensions, your only real choice is to go with Firefox.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Firefox-based browser, because
they on the Autobahn that
keep
fast.
supporting the older version of the extensions API.
Gotta go fast.
And they have their own extension store. They are the only other browser that has that, and that also supports the older version of these extensions API. So they will not be affected at all by the changes Google is making. So if you value that, you need to use Firefox or any of its derivatives. And now we're moving into Chromium-based browsers territory, meaning these browsers are all using the same base as Google Chrome.
So they're showing Vivaldi. I'm kind of on the fence about Vivaldi, whereas Firefox and the derivatives, they seem pretty good to me because it's the Gecko engine, and Firefox has a really solid history of being open source and in favor of open source.
Will be compatible with the same websites, deliver the same performance, but they don't look or feel the same, they don't necessarily give data back to Google, and things like that. So the first one will be Vivaldi. Full disclosure, this is not a fully open source browser. Their UI code
That's one of the issues I don't care for Vivaldi.
You can inspect it, it's been audited, but the browser itself is not fully open source. Only the Chromium core is, the rest isn't. Vivaldi is more operating system than web browser. It has a lot of features. It doesn't integrate really well with any Linux desktop, but some people don't mind that. They just want a browser that is very customizable and has a lot of features, and that's Vivaldi. It lets you pick where you want your tabs, it lets you pick the theme.
Still better than Opera GX.
Automatically have a tracker and ad blocker, meaning you won't be limited by what Google.
On that note, friends don't let friends use Opera GX.
Because these are not extensions, they are core features of Vivaldi that won't be limited by the changes in Chromium. You
Well, if
also
I'd
get
want
to
my
decide
mail
if you
to
want
actually
just
be
a
in the
browser
same
or if
browser.
you want
I
the
just
full
don't really-
operating system with email, calendar, feeds, and stuff like that. You will have to set these things up to add your accounts
You can use
and
Outlook
other things.
with it. Nice.
I don't think that belongs in a browser, but some people really enjoy this. It's a much more busy browser than other
Yeah, that looks
alternatives.
a bit
The
clunky.
settings also reflect that. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it is not a bad browser at all. It has plenty
It
of
looks
options
like
if you
there's just
like
too much shit
customization,
going
and if you
on.
don't really care whether your browser follows your theme and looks like the rest of your computer, you probably will appreciate Vivaldi. Now, Vivaldi said that they will drop Manifest v2 support, meaning they will be constrained by the same changes that Google is making to all extensions.
Boo!
Use the API and the store for extensions that Chrome uses. It's the Chrome Web Store. They don't have their own store. So when Google decides to shut down access to older extensions to the Chrome Web Store, Vivaldi will also lose access to that, but they're not as affected as all other browsers because they have their own tracker blocker and ad blocker built in, meaning, well, at least those parts of the experience are not constrained by what Google does. For me personally, Vivaldi does too much, and if I just
looks a
use
little
the
bit too
browser
noisy.
component, I much prefer using something Firefox-based that is fully open source because Vivaldi isn't. But if you like customization and options, you probably don't have something as fully fledged as Vivaldi out there. Just know that it will be affected by the same changes Google is making for most extensions, just not ad blockers and tracker blockers because they have built their own that aren't extensions. I will go very quickly on Microsoft Edge. This is really not something you should use. It collects a ton of user data. It is not open source apart from the Chromium base, which is the
Microsoft
same as
Edge
Google
can go
Chrome.
suck
They
my-
already dropped support for Manifest v2 extensions. And they basically said that their own extension store that they built will also drop that
Oh, it was
support, although they
TikTok that was
didn't
being
say
a dick.
exactly when.
Okay.
Meaning it has all the same disadvantages as Chrome has, except instead of giving your data to Google, you're giving it to Microsoft instead. Edge doesn't come with a tracker blocker or an ad.
Who the hell gets a Linux machine and installs Edge on it? Like, who wants Edge on a Linux box? I don't even like Edge on Windows.
blocker, obviously because Microsoft makes some money on data and ads,
'cause you hate yourself,
and it
it's
will
just
force
them.
you to use inferior versions of extensions. Seriously, all other options are better than Microsoft Edge. I'm not just saying that because it's a Microsoft product, but all other browsers will be just as fast, just as compatible, will have the same amount of extensions, but without all the data grabbing, or at least letting you disable most of it, letting you support better extensions that still exist or come with their own tracker and ad blockers by default. There is zero reason to use Edge these days. Absolutely none, at least if you're a Linux user.
I never even
or
understood
anyone
why
that is
Microsoft
mindful
released
of
a
what we're
Linux
talking
version
about in
of
this
Edge.
video. Don't use Edge. Of course, another strong contender is Brave. This
Brave's
is a
alright.
Chromium web browser, so it's also based on Google Chrome. It will render all web pages similarly to
The fun fact is, my mentor, the, female mentor that I had for cybersecurity, used to be a project manager at Brave. Not only that, Yitz apparently knows Brendan Eich.
what Google Chrome does. It's basically the exact same engine. It's also fully open source, except it blocks trackers and everything else in here. So it does have an ad blocker and a tracker blocker that will block all things that you want. It's not reliant on extensions to block all of this, meaning it's not going to be affected in
I
this
like
specific
Brave.
area.
Brave's the
by
backup I use
changes,
for when I need a
that Google has
Chromium-based
implemented.
browser,
They
'cause
call
some
these
websites
tracker
use it.
blockers shields. They're very configurable. Now, obviously, all these extensions are still sourced from the Chrome Web Store. So in 2025, when Google Chrome removes the Manifest v2 extensions from the Chrome Web Store, you also won't be able to easily get them in Brave. Probably you will be able to install them manually because Brave said that they wanted to keep support for it, but it won't be as easy as just clicking on the link and clicking install. Now, Brave does have a lot of features to configure how private you want things to be, the search engines you want to use, which they have their own search engine, which is Brave Search, which works pretty well. They have the unfortunate drawback of being focused on all the latest hype and stupid crap, like for example Web3 and crypto. If you don't care about this, if you just want a browser
that is
that has
one
plenty
complaint
of
I will
options,
say
plenty
with
of
the
features,
Brave
and
browser
you're
is
able to ignore
the whole
their
Web3
focus
and all
on
that. They were trying to appeal to the Web
hijack
Summit
ads and
crowds
put
they could
some
get
crypto instead
investors
and stuff like
stuff.
that, then sure, you can absolutely use Brave. It's not that bad at all. It's actually a pretty competent browser. Now there
I
is
don't
one
use the
other
web
issue
wallet
that
and
means
stuff
I will
like that.
never use Brave. That's their CEO and founder expressing some pretty dumb and harmful opinions over the years. It's easily documented. I won't go into it here. If this matters to you, then go look it up and you'll see if it's important. If you just want the software and you don't care what's around it, then Brave is absolutely a competent option. Just know that it will be affected in the long run by the changes Google is making to Chromium and to Chrome, because it does not have its own extension store. So installing good versions of extensions will get trickier as time goes on, unless Brave builds their own store, which they could. Opera is another option I will go over very, very quickly because, well, it's not open source apart from the Chromium
not
base
really a
that it
fan
relies
of
upon.
Opera. They used to be
Opera
great.
said that they will keep Manifest v2 extension support for as long as they can, but obviously they still rely on the Chrome Web Store, so they are gonna have to follow this thing as well. They have plenty of features, they are not bad, but they're also not doing anything that other browsers aren't already doing, and they belong to a Chinese consortium, which might be a problem for you or not. Honestly, it might be really good, but it
And
doesn't
OperaGX is
offer
garbage,
anything
too.
that other browsers don't already have and that are fully open source. There is no reason for it to be proprietary because everything it does is already available in other open source browsers.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
I don't really see any reason to use Opera if you're mindful about
Friends don't
freedom,
let
about
friends
your
use
data,
Opera
about privacy.
or
Just
Edge.
use something else. Now, of course, you also have other options, like, for example, the Tor browser or the Molvad browser. They are both Firefox-based. They are meant primarily to use the Tor network for maximum privacy, but this comes with a sizable browsing speed trade-off. They're not bad browsers, but they're not necessarily intended to be your primary day-to-day browser. They're here for when you really want super private browsing, but that's about it. You also had Arc browser, which seemed interesting, but it doesn't have a Linux version, and it's pretty much been abandoned. Their creators just said they were refocusing on, you guessed it, AI, and so the browser will probably not move along anymore, so you probably should not go and use that right now. There's also Maxton browser, but it's designed for Web3 and AI, and it isn't cross-platform either. It doesn't have a Linux version, so yeah, just don't use that. No reason to use this thing compared to anything else either. So all in all, if you want to avoid all those freedom-limiting moves that Google is doing to control how you can use your web browsers and what you can install in it and how you access the web, your only real option is Firefox or anything based on Firefox. I personally moved to Florp despite the absolutely heinous, stupid name. I despise it with all fibers of my being, but the browser itself is really good. I also gave a shot to Zen. Vertical tabs aren't my thing, but if you like that...
Yep, Florp. Let's try that for a sec. Alright. Let's open up my, Flat Hub. What is it called? F-O-L-O-R-P. No, 2 O's. Alright. Let's get this installed. We'll try it out, see what it's like. Get that installed as a user. I like to flat pack my things. It feels like, you know, a Rick and Morty. Remember the the how it's made episode with the one device they were talking about. I forget what that's called. What it feels like. We're gonna give that a sec. Blurp. Yeah, Max Thon is just some BS. Look, I am not a fan of anything that talks about, like, oh yeah, we're doing the Plumbus. That's it. Hey, thank you. Couldn't remember it. Brain fog. Give me a sec. My throat's killing me from this cold. Free cola. TikTok has been an absolute dick with the network speeds and everything lately. I've noticed the TikTok stream has crashed a few times. Anyway, where was I going with this? But yeah, Web3. Web3 is one of those overhyped things. Like, don't get me wrong. I like the idea of cryptocurrency. When it comes to Bitcoin, Monero, even Ethereum. But the problem with cryptocurrency is the crypto bros, and they've just ruined the entire point of it. It was there to bank the unbankable. Flip the entire world of a debt-based economy. Now it's just another asset in your portfolio to make you dollars. It has become the very thing we sought to destroy. But, like, I remember the TOG, the NFT displaying car, the electric vehicle, made no sense to me when I was at Web Summit. And I can't believe, in this day and age, people are still talking about NFTs, still talking about blockchain, like it's some amazing world revolutionary technology. Blockchain has its purpose, do not get me wrong. But I don't think it's as amazing as people think that... Okay, do you remember all the people that kept saying you need blockchain to have a decentralized internet? All those people that are like, oh, you want decentralized social media? Well, we're going to have to put it in a blockchain. You remember all those people? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Because I now have 2 separate networks here that are decentralized. One that's still in process of decentralization, and one that is fully decentralized. I'm playing with some crypto games that you get items that are cross game and servers. Yeah. That makes sense to me. But I remember I pissed off a lot of crypto bros. Hold up. Is this the 4th wall? Doubt it. I remember I pissed off a lot of crypto bros because I was saying that you don't need blockchain. In eastern PA, and it's snowing north of us in the state, but just rain here. Yep, got snow. And look how much blue sky is hopping. I got 30 plus notifications right here. So here's the thing that we were talking about. This got some popularity on the cybersecurity side. We need a feed for threat intel on Blue Sky for us, cybersecurity and infosec people. Something to share CVEs, attacks, and such rather than just the typical cybersecurity news. So somebody apparently made a feed for cyber threat hashtags. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. That place is hopping. I'm still waiting for Florp to download. It's got to grab a lot of files because it's pulling the NVIDIA. I don't know why it has to pull 3 versions of NVIDIA stuff. It's got 550, 555, and 560. Makes no sense to me. And it's cranking. 2.8 megabytes. The only issue that annoys me is, like, you can go and find your followers, but you can't find your exact follower count. After you get, like, 1K. It's just kind of like, yeah, you got that many. I want to see what Florp is like. We're going to wait for a second here while that installs. Takes its sweet ass time. It looks like the majority of the download is going to be the NVIDIA stuff. Weird. Ugh. 3 hours later. That is one of the annoying things when it comes to Flatpaks. Okay, it's downloaded almost everything. Now it's actually downloading the Florp file. See, this is the annoying thing. Okay, so it's installing right now. The only way you can get all the data, by the way, to know exactly your followers is you have to ping the API. You have to use that site. But anyway, let's try Florp. Florp! 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 I can pull that in later. Blurp, blurp. Blurp. Okay. What's the difference here? Firefox Proton design? Oh, it's just like slightly different. Okay. Start browsing the web. So it still has these little, like, pre-generated things over here. Here, let's check. How fast does CNN load? It's about the same. So, I don't know how I feel about this sidebar here. Is that, yeah, that stays right there. I don't know how I feel about this. Oh, that is interesting. You have translate built in. Hold up. Oh! You can add different pages. Nice. It opens in like this little tab. So what are they, a Japanese company, I guess? But then you can have notes over here. Which is kind of nice. Oh, I could see some use cases for this. Okay, so new note 1. Okay. That could actually be useful if you want to make some notes in here. But then again, wouldn't I just use Notepad? Florts. And of course, you got your history. I don't know how I feel about this. This is just like... Because here's the thing, okay? Oh, so you have this to share this with your phone. Bookmark. Open picture in picture. Interesting. That's interesting. You can have your different profiles in here. The extensions. Of course, going from the add-ons. Let's see. We're adding uBlock origin. Now the other thing we need to check is Dark Reader. These are the two extensions I have pretty much on every setup. I need my Dark Reader. This is kind of weird. Browser extensions for Androids are brought to you by Microsoft Edge. That's weird. Though they do have Dark Reader for iOS. I don't know how that works. Okay, so let's see. What's a website that we can test to see everything must be dark like my soul? Exactly. I feel like I said that at some point. I did, probably. Let's see, YouTube. Do I need to install libwidevine or something like that? Interesting. Oh yeah, because I'm not logged in. It seems like it's pretty decently fast. I mean, to be fair... I mean, it's about the same speed as this is. I mean, it's Firefox. Overall, it's an okay browser. I'd have to play with this more. The one thing I wish we would stop doing is passwords. Now, one sec. I want to check this. Do I have the ability to translate a page? Okay, so translating is built in here. So this is using whatever else is in here. Let's just... so that I can understand that. Oh my god, toi. You know, yeah, that looks like right. That looks right. But if I do translate page, okay, so it's still using the same thing. It doesn't support all languages, I notice. At least some of the languages I use. But then you have Google Translate over here. And I find myself using Google Translate a little bit more because you do have the ability to check a few other languages. Like, here, let's pick a basic site. Let's go to Wikipedia. No, that's going to be too much text. Yeah, hell. But yeah, I think Florp is a decent enough browser. It would just take me some getting used to for... Oh, there we are. I knew I'd have to enable DRM. Okay. So the thing I would have to get used to is this little sidebar here. Is there a way I can get rid of passwords here? Because I don't need passwords. Okay, so they have Gestrify. Okay, so yeah, offline thing. Yeah, so overall, it's basically Firefox with just extra steps. Not a bad browser. So, definitely can recommend Florp. Stupid name, though. It is a stupid name. I'm gonna be honest. It's a stupid name. But, it's a decent browser. Am I gonna personally use it? Probably not, because I'm gonna forget that I installed it. Just being honest. But, I would say, I'd recommend it. Ugh. Penguin Wiki. But, yeah, I think that's a good browser. I do think that we should stop using Google Chrome and all the Chromium-based browsers whenever possible, even though that's near to impossible, because a lot of the browsers are based on that, and some websites really do want that to have happen. But, thanks for sharing the videos, Vampire. We can definitely go through some more videos another time as well if people want to drop them in the Discord and Blue Sky and Mastodon and tell me they want me to react to them on stream. Ugh. Man, I am tired. Being sick sucks. But, with that being said, I think I'm going to call it an early night again because I am sick. I do want to get some sleep. I can feel my cold medicine is starting to wear off. I'm getting all stuffy and everything again. So I thank all of you for joining me. And we will be back on Sunday. And on Sunday, I should have the new cap for this as well. So my microphone will be fully decked out. I also have to go about cleaning my house a little bit. Yeah, it sucks. I gotta do some cleaning of my house. We found some bugs and stuff because, wow. There's a few food things out we forgot to clean up before we went to Portugal, so got all that. And, yeah, but thank you all for joining me. We'll be back on Sunday. Hopefully 100%. Maybe get back into the gaming on Linux and all that stuff. I love y'all. Stick around for the raid in a little bit. And don't forget, if you haven't already, follow me on all of my socials. TikTok, Mastodon, Blue Sky, YouTube, Twitch. We're on all of them. As well as, don't forget to join the, Matrix and Discord servers as well. And I love all y'all. Stick around for the raid, and I will see you next time.